I'm finding it much easier to laugh at myself than to get down. Although if I talk about insurance, that's what we do. Myself, my name is Lori Power. My company is MP Benefits, and I'm a group benefit consultant. Part of what I do for clients is to be consistent. And part of that consistency is I've started this show every week. And my goal in having this show is to bring creative, innovative, awesome people into the room every week to have an excellent conversation. That's you, Michael, in for that excellent conversation. So that's the purpose of it here. It is by this connection that we will all grow, share, and be successful together. I've met more people this last year than I've met in 23 years of business. So it's not easy the first time, but get to it and we'll get it done. So Michael is a workplace energizer, public speaker, guru, all around funny guy. And my first question to Michael was, why humor in leadership? How can those two things go together?
They go together incredibly well. They're a necessity. I don't think it's even a nice to have anymore. If you want to be an effective leader, you need to have a sense of humor. It keeps you humble. It keeps you more authentic and genuine. It helps you build connections, build bridges. It helps make you more approachable, more accessible. We know from so many studies that a positive sense of humor is positively correlated with effective leadership skills. West Point Naval Academy study, for example, found a positive correlation between the most effective, inspiring leaders and those that had a healthy, good sense of humor. And that's a pretty leadership-y kind of place. A Bell leadership study found that the two top traits employees said they wanted from their leaders was a good sense of humor and a strong work ethic. And it goes on and on. I could cite literally dozens and dozens and dozens of studies that bear this out. Effective leadership is about connecting at that human level, at that fundamentally human level. It's about building trust. And we know there's a positive correlation between humor and trust. We trust people more when they share a positive, healthy sense of humor, because I think we see them as being more real, more authentic, more genuine. It helps open up communication. It makes us more creative. There are so many benefits. In fact, on my YouTube channel, I just did a video a couple of weeks ago with 15 different reasons why you should embrace your sense of humor. So I think it is absolutely critical, Lori. If you want to be an effective leader, you need to have a sense of humor. And it helps. The way I look at leadership too is the metaphor I often use is it's like an orchestra conductor, right? You set the tone for your team, for your workplace. You decide what music is going to be played in your environment. So when you share your sense of humor, when you laugh at yourself, that sends an incredibly powerful message, and that helps create that tone in any workplace.
I think we spoke just beforehand, we said, it gives, there's a sense of vulnerability to it. To be able to laugh at yourself, I think first what I'm learning is it shows others that, yeah, I'm human, I make mistakes, and it's goofy. And let's laugh about it and move on. So connecting with that vulnerability, allowing that humor to flow. And as somebody has said, then it's contagious. It really is.
Oh, totally contagious. And I say this all the time, Lori/Elizabeth. Is it not a truism that the more seriously a person takes themselves, the less seriously we all end up taking those people, which is a little bit ironic, right? People take themselves so bloody seriously. And then the reality becomes nobody is taking you seriously anymore because you're taking yourself so bloody seriously. So
well, you always want to poke it in there, right? Like if you have somebody that serious, and Patty, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about Nathan all the time. I just want to poke him and make him laugh, right? That's what I want to do. Tell me though, you didn't come into this without motivation. So take me through the Dilbert years and what transpired in order for you to say there has to be a better way.
The Dilbert years, I love that. That should be the name of my biography. I survived the Dilbert years. Yeah, so I worked in.
Don't forget the next book.
Yes, I worked many lifetimes ago, over 20 years ago. I worked in what I would affectionately describe as a soul-sucking fun sucking. You have to be very careful when you say that phrase fast, I've learned. Fun sucking, soul sucking, Dilbert-like workplace that was sucking the life out of me. The culture was awful. It was just this oppressive culture. I was a senior manager in this organization, but I didn't feel valued. The culture was just awful. I was going home, just lying on the couch, just dreaming about a better future. And so I decided I had to do something. I bailed on, as we do, right? When we end up in those workplaces, we end up in survivor mode, just praying that someone votes us off this island. So I voted myself off the island and decided that I would make this my mission to talk about how workplace cultures affect our lives, how work affects our lives. And work should be a joy. It should be inspiring. It shouldn't be sucking the life out of us. It's too important. Our work affects our marriages and family lives and our physical and mental health and our identity and who we socialize with. It's just a wee bit of a time sucker. So I think we owe it to people to make our workplaces as rocking, as inspiring, and yes, as fun as possible. And I was always known in my position as a manager for having a really good sense of humor. And I knew I had that ability to use my humor in my position to break tension in tense meetings, to connect with my employees better, to connect with my colleagues, to communicate messages so they stood out from the herd and all that good stuff, and to keep me sane. I had a humor file where I just collected the accidentally funny stuff that would happen. This was in a government organization, so there was a lot to just keep me sane. And so that is why I glommed onto the humor connection as well. I thought, there's more to this humor stuff than just, I think, laughing around, joking around. And I ended up going to a humor conference right when I left my job. And that was kind of the light bulb moment where I thought, that's going to be my focus, is talking about creating more fun, humor-filled workplaces, because it really is, I think, one of the most underappreciated resources we have to help us be more successful.
And it is quite a science. I've gone on to that website now that you've introduced to me, and their conference is coming up, their annual conference. But the science behind it is astounding. And I wonder how I've been in business as long as I have been and had no idea that that culture piece, because you hear a lot of words, you hear a lot of talking, but you don't hear a lot of doing, right? Like the success stories. We're gonna, but we don't hear it on the other end. Is it truly effective? Are your employees engaged? Do they want to promote your workplace? And to see that science behind it is incredible.
Yeah, I would say in the last 20 years, there has been an explosion of research and science in areas like humor, like happiness, even workplace culture, where they're measuring all of these things. I'll share with the group, I go to these conferences every now and then. I'm a member of the International Group of Humor Studies, which is an academic association. Their conferences are so boring, even though they're all about humor. They're like just, oh my God, they're just absolutely brutal. And I remember going up to one speaker who was actually quite funny and engaging. And I thanked him for his great presentation, but I also said, and thank you for the humor, that was awesome. And he looked around the room like this, and he said, it's very controversial to use humor in our talks, so thank you for that. Kind of mixed messages these folks deliver.
I was thinking a bit of an oxymoron there. I'm going to tell you how to use the science, but
yeah. No, I was just going to say that, yeah, there is so much science and evidence to support everything that I talk about, and I refer to a lot of those examples. But at the same time, part of me thinks, boy, it's 2021. Should we not just be doing some of this stuff just because it's the right thing to do as well? Do we still need to convince people with all these numbers and data that we need to be doing some of this stuff? In my books, it's just the right thing to do. There's this very sad book I read last year called Dying for a Paycheck. And the premise is kind of in the title of the book. People are dying literally for a paycheck. The book lays out the argument that the number one cause of the healthcare crisis in the United States, and we could apply this to Canada, I'm sure, is the workplace culture. The workplace cultures are killing people. And how sad, how tragic is that? So let's do some of this stuff, not just because it's going to make us more money, it's going to reduce our employee turnover rate, all that good stuff, but because it's the right thing to do in this short thing called life. And the way I look at this too is, and I say this to my clients all the time, look, even if adding more fun to your workplace culture, even if focusing on your workplace culture intentionally in fun, engaging ways doesn't deliver all the amazing results I suggest it will, what would you rather have? The same level of success and less fun, or the same level of success and at least enjoy the journey a little bit more? It seems like a no-brainer question to me.
It absolutely is. Patty, you had a question.
Yeah, I'm interested to know your take on sarcasm, because I'm a lawyer, and lawyers love words, and lawyers love to cut other people down instantly, as a culture among our profession. And so, sarcasm is sometimes viewed as humor, but what's your take on it?
Well, that's a really good question, Patty. That was my attempt at sarcasm.
Yeah.
No, it is a really good question. The Greek root of the word sarcasm comes from a term sarkos, which means to tear at flesh like a dog. So it's definitely not the healthiest, most positive style of humor, especially when it's in the written form. When we're using sarcasm in email, in text messages, that is very often a recipe for disaster, because people can't see your twinkling eyes, your little smirk, your facial expressions. They don't know that you were being sarcastic, that you were making a joke. They can easily take you at face value, and it can lead to all sorts of problems and huge miscommunication. So I am not a big supporter of using sarcasm in the written word. I think when we use it in the workplace setting, we have to be very, very careful. And of course, the humor style that we use is going to depend on the nature of the relationships we have, right? If we've got a close colleague we've worked with for 20 years and we have that level of trust and rapport, then of course, we're probably going to be sarcastic with one another, and we get that. That's who. But if it's a first-time customer, if it's your boss, maybe not so much. We have to be really careful. Humor researchers identify 4 different styles of humor. 2 of them are positive, 2 of them are negative. And of course, when we talk about creating more human-focused, positive workplace culture, we should be focused on those more positive forms of humor. But again, a lot of it is relationship dependent, right? My good friend Richard Haddon is on the call here today. We do a little thing every other Wednesday, and we can be a little sarcastic with each other. I think Richard and I and the gang, because we know each other very well. But for the most part, my suggestion is to avoid sarcasm as much as possible.
I'll give a shameless plug for your every other Wednesday. Again, if you haven't checked that out, you definitely should. Little bits of time, they matter, right? If they're making a difference by integration and seeing what's out there, I will definitely put a plug in there for every other Wednesday. It's fantastic. We talked about the meeting last week, but I want, in my household, we like to be puntacular. And that brings me to talking about the example of the dirt bags, our Calgary example that you use quite often in the book, and how they turned things around. Can you give us a brief summary of that example on how they used what they did to turn it into the culture, attract people in, and retain them?
Yeah, for sure. This is a company, and they are called DIRT. Some of you may know, some of the Albertans may be familiar with the company. It's an acronym. I'll botch the acronym if I try and say it. But if you go onto their website and their About Us section and the career section, it is really, they do a brilliant job at how they define their culture in just everyday conversational language. It's got heart, it's got energy, it's got humor. You can tell, oh, these guys don't take themselves seriously. And the nickname they give themselves as employees, because they work for a company called Dirt, so they call themselves Dirtbags, right? That sends a pretty powerful message about not taking ourselves too seriously. Hey, we're Dirtbags, and we own that title, and we're proud of it. But their humor is a little bit, and they even say that, I think, that they come out and say, our humor is a little bit irreverent. We're in the construction business, but we do like to have fun. And to me, they are a brilliant example of how every company should be doing it when it comes to attracting better qualified employees for your culture. You've got to speak to people's hopes and dreams and desires and hearts and get away from the blah, blah, blah and add some more rah, rah, rah. I see so many where, you know, we offer a competitive package of benefits and right? No, come on. Tell us about your culture. Tell us about what it's like to work. What are your people like? What are you doing to change the world? Make it conversational, make it fun to attract. And we know, again, from so much research, that when you do that, when you put that offer out there, you do attract way more people to your business and better qualified people who are a better match for your culture. So I'm a huge proponent of saying, of really pushing that way more than most companies do. Fun videos, a fun top 10 list. Hey, here are the top 10 and a half reasons why you need to come and work with us. Bring it to life with some energy and some passion and some humanity, and make it conversational.
How do we transcend this virtual time though? I attended a session yesterday, which was all about people, right? The whole thing was how to attract and retain people, how to hire, how to fire, when to fire, all of those things. And there was so much, and knowing that I was having you on today made me jaded. So I was looking for certain things, but there was so much push for that technology. Have them log in first, have them answer all of these questions. There was no personality to that. And I thought, okay, well, are you attracting robots or are you attracting people? So tell me how to transcend where we are now, having to interview virtually, having to not just attract people, but to walk them through that process. What do we need as business owners? Basically, I want to know, how do I pull personality into a screen?
In a virtual world? Yeah, well, okay. I think it's more challenging, but I think the same principles still apply. And you were just showing me, you've got my book, Hire, Inspire, and Fuel Their Fire, which is all about onboarding, recruiting employees to fit your culture. And what so many great companies do is they relentlessly hire for culture, not just culture fit, but culture growth. People who will, yes, fit our culture, but we don't want clones of ourselves necessarily. We want people who can challenge us, who will grow our culture in the direction we want to take it. And so many great companies, including many, I went to Helsinki and interviewed a whole bunch of companies that are doing really cool things with their hiring practices. They relentlessly hire first and foremost for attitude, for humor even. They go through process after process, step after step in the interview recruitment process to get to know the person at a human level. So there might be a pre-screening level that's focused on the qualifications. Does this person have whatever is necessary in terms of the licensing, the education, that stuff? Okay, we got that out of the way. And there is a company, Find a Way, based in Cleveland, for example. They have no less than 10 touch points with every candidate they're considering hiring. 10 touch points to make sure this person is someone we want to spend 8 hours a day with on our team. And their litmus test is everybody on the team who gets to interact with potential candidates. You have to literally be leaping across the table saying, hire this person, please hire this person, or they won't hire the candidates. So to get this right, and the reason I wrote that book, Lori, is because 95% of the battle is making sure we're hiring the right people, that we're not hiring jerks, no matter how brilliant they are. You have to, no matter, even if you're a small business, whatever you were doing before, invest double, triple, quadruple. I'm quite serious about that. The time, the money, the investment in your hiring and recruitment, because it will pay off. I know.
And it costs so much to replace people.
Oh, huge.
You get the wrong hire in there, you're losing all of that person's salary, plus having to go through that whole process again. So, you don't want to be that hamster on the wheel.
No.
Part of, I think, why I took to insurance the way I did, I come from a media background, and I answered the first ad of my career. I used to be one of those people that would walk in, if I saw a job I wanted, I'm the person for you, and off we go to the races. And I answered an ad And they, you give a lot of really good examples in your books. So I can't plug them enough, by the way. But the interesting thing is that they did so many good things. They sent me a handwritten note to say, we're so glad you've decided to join the team. My team lead came out and took me for lunch and said, listen, this is just the beginning, but we want you to feel comfortable. I want you to get to know me. And they sent me off to head office. They trained me. They did everything that they were supposed to do. Then I had to work at the satellite office, and it became a we versus they situation. And none of that culture that they engaged me with, that they wowed me. I felt like I married them and then found out I was married to the wrong person.
That's a great metaphor.
How do companies that start off with those great intentions in their head office, how do they make that? I know there's many people here who have satellite offices. How do you transcend your culture, not just virtually now, but to those offices, so everybody is feeling that same sensation of belonging?
Yeah, and that's a huge question, and it's critically important. As I say all the time, great cultures don't just happen. It takes work. It takes commitment. You have to be intentional. You cannot buy your culture at Costco or IKEA. You've got to absolutely relentlessly keep bringing your culture to life in consistent ways. You've got to make sure if you've got those values on the wall, blah, blah, yeah, blah, 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 who cares? You've got to translate those values into observable behaviors and attitudes and bring them to life in dramatic ways. And you have to absolutely just beat that culture drum relentlessly. And it means being consistent. So it's through the whole process, right? It's hiring for your culture, training for it. It's keeping the culture message alive by doing maybe culture boot camps 2 or 3 or 4 times a year, having a culture moment to open your meetings with, where you reinforce the importance of certain cultural behaviors, where you recognize and reward employees based on your culture. And you always tie those rewards and recognition back to your values. Here's why we're celebrating Susan. Here's why Richard is getting this recognition, because here's what Richard did to rocket, and that is one of our primary values. And it comes down to communication, right? Just relentlessly bringing those values down and making sure everyone lives them. I know it's Kimpton Hotels, boutique hotels in the United States. Phenomenal customer service, phenomenal culture. They do a road show with some of their senior leaders where they travel all over the States to all of their different properties to make sure they're delivering that culture message consistently. So they're making sure everybody is getting that same message, that same understanding, and then staying connected with those properties to make sure everyone is living those values, living that culture out loud.
I think there's sometimes what's frustrating is you hear a lot of the talk. I'm like, show me, don't tell me. Show me that you're doing it. And Laurel has such a great example or a metaphor that she says sometimes you don't want to spend that money on those soft sides of your business. She says like a slingshot. You got to pull it back and invest that money in order to, am I saying this right, Laurel? In order to get the right trajectory, right? And many businesses see that as an expense that they perhaps can't afford, whereby, in our conversation, I think I'm in line to say you can't afford not to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love, yeah, and I say that so many times. You can't afford not to do some of this stuff because it pays off. It saves you money in the long run, and it will earn you money in the long run. So, and I hate that phrase, soft skills. Can we just stop saying that? Oh my goodness, there's nothing soft about them. This is what great organizations do to rocket and be more successful. So what on earth is soft about that?
Yeah, it's your people at the end of the day who matter.
I want to know too from Patty if I answered your question about sarcasm okay, and if you kind of agree with my take on sarcasm.
Yeah, I really like the idea of just sort of coloring it with positive humor, right? The idea of positive humor, because I see people cringe and it hurts my heart. So And I see this in professional settings. I see it with clients. I see it with my coworkers. And so, just focusing on, yeah, we want to be fun and we want to be funny, but we want to be positive. And that's really the underlying piece. So yeah, I do appreciate your comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Patty.
And Lisa, you were talking about attitude is everything. And as an HR consultant, I can only imagine how often you're having to talk to your clients about that.
And I really appreciate what you said about the soft skills, because I believe in people first cultures, and where people aren't numbers, they're actually people, and you actually get to know them. And part of that is having fun and knowing and understanding. There are some people you can be sarcastic with, but like you said, you have to build that trust, and building that circle of trust. And the one thing for me with culture and values, and I agree with everything you say, you have to live them. They can't be words on the wall. If they're words on a wall, then it's just BS, and nobody's going to do it anyways. And the thing that I keep telling my clients too is that, okay, you have to tell them again and again and again and again. Create those stories. When you're tired of saying it, you've only just begun. So you just have to keep doing it and keep showing it, and creating stories, because people engage with stories. And just great information, and everything resonates really well with what I believe in how workplaces should be.
I agree so much. Stories are everything. If you can translate your values into stories, right? Far more powerful. Turn them into story after story after story. Here's what we mean by that. I can't tell you the number of senior leadership workshops I've been in where I talk about where first of all, they don't even know their values. I'm thinking, okay, you guys are the senior leaders, right? And then they don't even know what they mean. When I say, okay, what do you guys mean by this value? And they're reaching for their dictionary. Some of them going, integrity. What does that actually mean? They don't.
Or I have to look it up, right? Just give me a minute. I'll look up what our values are if you don't know it off the top.
Yeah. A very simple example that not sure if I talk about it in that book, Lori, that you were referencing, but I was visiting a company in Copenhagen, Denmark. Remarkable culture. They did this dirt simple exercise. They came up with 4 new core values, all driven by employee input. Great idea there. And then they did a very simple exercise. 1 week, let's focus on one value at a time, and let's live this in an outrageously loud way. Like everybody go nuts. So we'll put the meter way over here. We won't maybe sustain that because we're asking people to just go crazy for a week. Maybe the needle will come back more here, but let's just do it for a week. See what happens. Then we'll go down. Week 2, value 2, week 3, value, right? Cycled through the 4. After 6 months, every single employee working in that company agreed with the statement, I now work for a brand new company, because they brought them to life in a meaningful, fun way.
It's amazing what you get when you ask the employees.
And I do have a question for Richard too. I don't know, and I'm totally evading your question, but which is, how did the cow become content? All I've seen is your email address, and I was just love that contented cow.
The cow became content by doing much of what Michael Kerr talks about.
Good answer.
By creating a great workplace.
Very good. We refer to our senior executive team is called the TAG team, and TAG is an acronym for Together, Adapt, Grow. And we very much live that. Essentially, the description is in reverse order, both personally and professionally. We don't believe there is a status quo. You're always growing or you're dying. But in order to grow, we have to be able to adapt, and you can't adapt unless you're together as a group. So, and the team also knows humor, especially for me. I still think April 1st should be a national holiday. No, actually, it shouldn't be a national holiday because I need to do my work on April 1st while I'm in the office.
I love that, Mike. Thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah, I'm curious, Michael, what would you suggest as sort of the most common symptom of a lack of humor that can be easily shifted?
The most common symptom?
Yeah. So when you encountering an organization and they're trying to integrate humor in, and they're, what's a really easy way for them to start?
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. One of the things I suggest right off the bat, one of the most important things for me is remembering your meetings are incredibly important touch points. And they are touch points for your culture. Your meetings should reflect the culture that you want, but they're also a really important touch point to create the kind of culture you want. So if you have a really oppressive, serious tone in your culture, and it's starting from usually on up high with the senior leadership, that's gonna affect everybody, and that sends a powerful message that filters through your entire environment, your entire organization, I think. So one, get your meetings right and make sure you inject a lot of fun in them. I have an article on my website, 130 ways to add a little bit of fun and connect in the virtual world even there. So I'd invite you to check that out, because you make sure your meetings are fun to create that psychologically safe space. Another really simple thing that you can do is create some fun recognition rewards to send the message that we value fun in our workplace. We don't take ourselves too seriously, so create some just fun awards, just some plain fun awards, like Richard's this quarter's winner of the most likely to OD on caffeine award. So it's just kind of silly. Or create some fun awards that are tied to some of the behaviors you want to see. So like the Houdini award for whoever magically made a big problem disappear, or the Ha Ha award for whoever keeps everyone laughing and spirits up during a really challenging time, or the I Got Your Back award for whoever best looks out for everybody's mental and physical health. So creating some fun awards can be a really quick way to do that. And then my third suggestion would be look for opportunities for, and at least just do one, a ritual or tradition that you can create in your workplace. I'm a huge fan, and every inspiring workplace I've researched around the globe, huge believers in rituals and traditions, because they give everyone something to look forward to, something to reminisce about, and they create that sense of shared team experience that helps build a strong culture. And there's no shortage of things you can do. It could be something dirt simple. One of my clients, a couple of my clients now, they do third person Thursdays, for example. Like, how easy is that? Introverts love this one because it's dirt simple. You just have to go throughout the day referring to yourself in the third person. And how can you not smile or laugh when you, hey, Mike's looking forward to the meeting later on. Hey, Mike has an idea, right? It's so stupid, but it works. So simple little things like that. A lot of my clients do rituals where they have a Friday afternoon huddle. Doesn't have to be long, 15 minutes, where they celebrate the top highlights of the week. So they leave everyone feeling pumped. They might share some good news stories, read a letter from a customer, and everybody share their top 3 wins of the week. Great way to end. And then as long as you stick to it, turn it into a tradition to help build your culture.
One of the things you said too on last week on the Every Other Wednesday was not every meeting needs to be a meeting. You can connect with your team outside of having it to be a meeting. And sometimes you can just make it that fun gathering where we're still going to take the time, we're going to get to know, have your lunch. And I thought that is excellent for communicating your culture and how important your people are to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just casual, the importance of conversations. I cannot stress that enough. We need to have more conversations at work and less meetings, and casual get-togethers, whether it's social functions, whether it's something like Beryl Health call centers. They have a phenomenal workplace culture. They do something called Chat and Choose. And I love the name, where the senior managers are all there, but no agenda at all. You just come, they've got food, you grab a coffee, and they'll just take questions from the employees, and just very loose conversation. They make sure it's fun, it's a light tone, and everyone just uses that as a great way to connect.
So what's the last word on this?
The last word on this is just try something. We do not create a great, inspiring, rocking workplace culture through a 1 or 10 or 20 times a year event. It's not even things you can always check off on your to-do list, right? It's about just looking for those simple things that you can do consistently to send some of those messages, those simple things you can do consistently to bring your values to life, to bring a little more humor into your workplace. So start simple. One, it sounds so dirt simple, but dirt simple thing you can do is just start a humor file or humor book to collect some of the funny, especially the accidentally funny stuff you see in the world out there, and make it a team sport. So you're all on the lookout. And again, that's just a simple way of sending the message. Hey, we want to have a little bit of fun around here. We value safe, positive humor in our workplace. So everybody contribute to a big accidentally funny humor pile where we can just collect the funny stuff we see out there in the universe.
Oh, and there's not a person on this call today that I think can't do that, because we all have such craziness that happens in our world. I can't thank you enough for coming in. This has been the most fantastic conversation ever. And speaking of consistent, I do this consistently every week where I try to bring in great presenters and talk to people to have a conversation. Remember, all boats float on a good tide. So do share with one another, connect with somebody you didn't know, and have a virtual coffee. And until next time, thanks so much for coming in. I hope you'll come back again.